welcome. Hi to see you again, Carmen. I'm so happy to have you here again.
I'm so happy to be back, Yasmina. I mean, you know how happy I am about today's interview.
Yes, I think we have a special guest, and those who doesn't know, we have someone who actually has been a colleague of our Carmen. So we are going to have a lot of insight here. So I know that you don't want to know about us, but we are going to introduce a little bit about ourselves for sure. I'm Yasmina, an intellectual property lawyer, and Carmen, who is my wonderful guest. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Of course, I'm Carmen, also known as Carmeline in esports. Not Carmeline in esports, just Carmeline. I'm a casting host in this industry, and I think that's enough about me.
So, are you ready for our guest?
Yes!
Yes, say welcome to Will. Hey!
Hello, how's it going?
Good.
Hello. We're so excited to have you here, Will, also known as Viperoon, in this esports thing that we are doing. Thank you for accepting our invitation. And now I hope you're ready because this is going to be starting now.
Actually, yes.
Ready.
And I wanted to know that a lot of information about Carmen, so be ready because I want to know all the details about herself.
Okay.
I mean, there's some stories, certainly.
Perfect.
So
I
there can
will
be.
love
Okay.
to hear it. And I think our audience too, because they wanted to know her too. So, Will, but first of all, because I don't know you, so can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Will. I also go by Viperoon on the internet.
Mhm.
I am a few things really in esports. So I'm primarily, my main job is I'm the customer and events manager at Hitmarker, which is the leading gaming jobs website in the world, which is very fun. And I dabble in the old casting, hosting, talking about video games thing. So I've been doing that for a couple of years as well. And I used to be an esports observer before I moved into casting, or like alongside casting for. It's confusing. The timeline doesn't really add up, but I did some of that as well back in the day.
We will ask you about what an observer is later on because that's another role that many people might not know. But what you're watching on screen, what you're watching in an esports game, a great part of that is thanks to the observers. So take note of that. But before talking about it, you said you, well, started working for esports like around 2 years ago. Could you tell us how that was and what was the video game that got you into all of this craziness?
Well, I'm quite a weird case in that I started playing. I was like the last person in my friend group to start playing esports titles. I was kind of into gaming, but very much like in like solo or non-competitive
Okay.
stuff. I played a little bit of Ghost Recon, like kind of competently online, but I was too young to really be in the whole playing esports thing, and I didn't take it very seriously, so that wasn't the one. But all of my friends started playing a game called League of Legends, the classic. But I went to boarding school at the time, so I didn't really have the ability to play video games at all during the week. It was only a weekend thing. So I started playing a bit of League of Legends here and there, just kind of for fun, just to like play with my mates, basically. And as time went on, they were like, "Oh, there's like a whole thing. You can go and watch professional players." And I was like, "That's hilarious. Why would I want to go watch someone play a video game? That's stupid." But also, I'll definitely go because my friends are going and it'll be funny. So that's the attitude I went in with when I first went to an event. I think it was EULCS 2013, 14 in London.
Whoa.
Maybe. I started playing League in like, I was the last of my mates to start playing, and I started playing in like early season 2. So it's controversial that I am rubbish at League of Legends. And so I went to that event. I was like, this is actually really hype and fun, and people are getting into it. So I was playing video games on and off, like esportsy titles. Up until that point, I went off to university and I joined the Esports Society up in Birmingham, which is where I studied. And I kind of got really into it from there, just because there was so much passion and people who were like, this is actually a thing that you can do for a living, and this is actually something you can take part in, like the same way you would a sport. Because I came from a big sport background, with watching football and cricket and all of this stuff. So that's kind of how I got my passion for esports. And then I wound up in the industry because I got my degree. I'd been really involved in the esports scene in the university level. Not ever as a player because I was awful, but I never made the national league. I made one playoffs in Hearthstone in like 2015, and that was it. But then I was looking for a job because I was like, I want to work in esports. This is kind of what I want to do. But I was looking for that and everything else because I just needed money because I needed a job because no one was hiring a politics graduate in 2018 apparently. And the first job offer I got was as a freelance esports observer. That was the first like thing that was offered to me that would pay enough money for me to feed myself, basically. So I took that, and it kind of snowballed from there, really.
I can confirm that he's still very bad at video games. Personally speaking, I've experienced that.
Love to know that.
firsthand.
Lately, I would like to focus on the observer because it's a role that I didn't know before that.
Mm.
But first of all, I want to ask about why you have Viperoon like a like a name. Or
Well, this
and
is
I know
the
Carmen have a question related with that as well.
Yeah, why is it a turtle? Like,
Right,
if you
okay,
look at his
this
icon,
is-
Twitter, on social media, it's always a turtle.
It's not a okay. First
is a
off,
turtle.
Viperoon is my name because when I was on, and this is this is muddied the waters. I can't remember if it was Club Penguin or
Okay.
Adventure Quest. It was one of the two, like those OG like browser games that you could play when I was like
Okay.
6 or 7, probably. No, it must have been slightly later than that. I was definitely at primary school, so before the age of 11.
Mhm.
It was like choose your username, and I hadn't ever like done the internet before, really. So I was like, I'm gonna be called Viper because snakes are cool. Because I was like 9, and I put in Viper, and of course the name was taken because of course it was. So it was like, why don't you call yourself Viper 00, like the number?
My
And I was like, no, because not even as a child, I was like, haha, numbers and names are silly. So I was like, what if I change it to like O's? So I was like, Viperoo. That's like cool. Roo's like a kangaroo. That's kind of like two animals that are kind of kick at. Like we can make that work.
Mhm.
But I was a dumb kid who couldn't type. So I accidentally hit the N at the end.
Oh.
And then I just clicked enter. And I was like, welcome Viperoon. And I was like, oh, this is my name now. And I did for a while at university. When I first started casting a little bit, and when I was playing like at a slightly higher level in gaming, I actually changed my name to Collision because I was like, this is a better name. And then after like
Okay.
6 months, everyone was like, it's not a better name. Change it back. So I did, and I've been Viperoon ever since because I can't be bothered to completely rebrand myself at this stage, even though.
Yeah.
Will Viper and Whittingham is super long and it's a nightmare to put on any underlays. Like it's just much longer than everyone else's names is the problem. And it's not a turtle. The reason my Discord icon is a Torkoal from Pokemon.
It's
a
also
happy
your
Torkoal.
Twitter icon.
It's not my Twitter icon.
It used to be. Anyways, why
What?
is it a turtle?
Okay, so that's never been my Twitter icon. Carmen's lying to you because
Perfect to know
I'm
that.
in my like friend Discord. So the Discord where like I play video games with my friends, basically, was everyone was like, let's change our icons to happy Pokemon. And I was like, that's great, let's do it. Famously, and if you follow Hitmarker for any amount of time, you know my favorite Pokemon is not actually Torkoal, it's Milotic. But the happy Milotic picture was rubbish. It was like super not fun. And I was like, let me find a Pokemon that's got a fun icon. And Torkoal, if you know anything about Pokemon, it's kind of bad. It's just like a spicy turtle, which is fun. And it looks so happy in its picture. I was like, yes, you are my new icon. So I changed that to be in line with my friends on Discord. And then it became funny when I was being invited to like Discords for like casting gigs and stuff like that. Because you got everyone else with like really professional like pictures of them casting or like headshots. And it's just like bang, headshot, casting pic, professional headshot. And then it's just a Torkoal. And I'm always at the bottom because my name starts with V. So I'm always the last person on the list. It's just a happy little turtle. Love and life. And I think it's funny. So I just kept it.
It is really funny though.
Love it to know the story behind it. And you know that, for example, it's really tricky how Pokemon because in Spanish we have the names, but it could be different. And it's like I try to figure out which one it is. Like, oh my god, I don't know exactly which one are you referring to, but it's okay. We are not talking here about Pokemon.
I'll send you a
I have to
picture
control
later. No
myself.
big deal. I'll send you a picture. It's okay. So Will, now that
Hello.
we've gotten hello there, Viperoon, and that we've gotten a little bit into your casting career, I would like to ask you whether you decided to become a caster because you were an observer first,
Mm.
and what made the decision? Also, not just any kind of caster, a play-by-play one, which we will talk about the specifics later. But why did you decide this?
So I did my first ever cast in 2015,
Okay.
which doesn't really add up with the timeline. But essentially, when I was going to university, I saw that Newell was a thing, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"That's cool," but I'm rubbish. So I assumed I wouldn't be able to play in it,
Mm-hmm.
which wasn't the case. Newell has leagues for all abilities. I played for all 3 years I was there, but I was like, I can shout at video games. That sounds fun. I could commentate. So I applied to be a commentator. I applied with a mate of mine called Chris, really lovely dude, doesn't really play League anymore. But
Oh.
we went into a new application, we got interviewed, we did a practice cast. We never heard back. We were rubbish. They didn't even give us a rejection. We were that bad. So shout out for that one. But when we were doing this like practice cast, where I
Mm-hmm.
can't remember who it was one of the new casters was with us. Me and my mate both went in with the kind of idea that we were going to be the analysts because
Yeah.
I like the talking about the game, and then so we both went in with that attitude, and then the cast was like, one of you needs to shout at the team fights, and I was like, fine, do you know what, I'll do it, whatever, you can be he was high elo than me, so I was like, it makes more sense that I do the shouting at the team fights and you do the analysis. We were both awful, so it didn't really matter. But then I went to university and I started doing some like free casting on the side with university, someone who was at university with me. He was in third year when I was in first year, and he wanted to do the analysis as well. And I was like, whatever, I'll just do the shouting. I didn't do that much casting at university because I wanted to actually pass my degree, and I was not. And for me back then, it was like, haha, casting, it's funny. This isn't a career. How can people do this full time? I was a very naive. I still am a very naive person.
Mm-hmm.
So I quit casting after I did one night of ESL Prem, like just the second stream of that as a favor to one of the admins I had worked with doing some volunteering stuff because he needed casters. So I quit in 2016. Kind of thought nothing of it. It wasn't really a career choice. It was just something I did for fun. And then when I was job hunting in 2018, after I graduated, I was looking for something to fill up my time, and I was like, casting, that's something I did. Let's see if I can get involved. So I did some shopping around, see if there was anyone who needed a caster. Not that many people did, and I got a lot of rejections. People were like, "We don't know. This is a turbo random. Why would we want this caster?" Which was pretty funny. Until I got a shot at a league called Square One Champions League back in the day when it was starting up.
Wow.
Wow.
And they had me in for a couple of interviews. I did well, apparently. Don't know why they hired me, but they did. And then I kind of was just casting from there. And then I started observing 3 or 4 months later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm finding it interesting because people have to know that getting jobs as a caster is sometimes implies being rejected. Like most of the time, it implies this, especially when you are beginning, and you have to look for smaller kind of events to try and find your place in the market. Because otherwise, I mean, if you just aim for the bigger leagues, then okay, you might be that good, but essentially you always have to start from the bottom. But you're a great example to show how your career has skyrocketed, which we hopefully will see more of in the future. But for now, let's keep going with the questions because we've got so many of them.
And actually, the next question is related because, of course, you know this
Mhm.
observer and caster role, and I would like to know the difference between them because I never heard it before. I don't know
Mhm.
if it's because in Spain they don't have it, or maybe they have it but with a
Mm.
different name.
Mhm.
Yeah, so observers are so obviously casters are people like next to the camera shouting at a video game. Observers are kind of like the in-game camera men and women. So
Okay.
you'll be deciding what is shown on screen at any given
Mhm.
time within the
Oh,
game. So you'll be moving the camera around, getting the best angles, scrolling to make sure that the whole team fight is on screen, deciding in split team fights where the action, what should be shown. You're also deciding what's going to be shown on replay. If there are any cinematics in the game, so where the camera like goes like down into the like map, that's usually an observer as well.
Mhm.
And then calling for stuff like split screens, deciding when to toggle for gold, moving all the overlays and stuff around. So that's what an observer is. So it's quite different, but it's the kind of thing where it's a lot of fun. I think some of my best esports memories ever have been while observing,
Oh,
just because you get to like sit behind the scenes, hang out, talk nonsense with other people, and just watch loads of really good League of Legends.
oh, giving you credit for
okay.
that, I played role from server like twice in my life, and it was so stressful. Like peep out, peep down. I wouldn't be able to do it, but I mean, you really were amazing at that. At least no one complained about it, and still, you made your career as a caster. So that's just amazing, Will. I admire you for that. Um, so before we talk about Hitmarker, I want to
Hmm.
ask a question that I think we all have in mind, which is having been in so many competitions, university sports masters, NLC, Wild Rift Origins now, what do you enjoy about, well, not only about each one of them, but which one did you enjoy the most? Which one was the funniest, and which one was the most challenging for you?
In terms of casting, it's
Yeah.
difficult. I think I love working on the European Masters.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, the one that's just gone by. Um, it was kind of it was an online tournament, but it was just so wild to be on like the casting team with so many like really great professionals
Mm-hmm.
in esports. And I'd done NLC before, so there was a lot of crossover. But it was amazing to work with people who I kind of worked alongside as an observer.
Mm-hmm.
Because I observed two European Masters before I was a caster or alongside amateur casting. So it was a lot of people who I'd like worked with and enjoyed hanging out with basically. And then being able to go like, haha, I am now one of you. Let's go was really fun. And while it wasn't in person,
Mm-hmm.
it was really awesome to work with. I was fortunate in that I got to work with a lot of people on camera and hang out with a lot of awesome people in the green room behind the scenes and stuff as well. So it wasn't a perfect tournament just because I didn't get to work with all the people I wanted to work with and a lot of things had to
Mm-hmm.
swap around. So, but it was a lot of fun and the people I got to work with were incredible as per, because they always are. I think my favorite one,
True, true. I mean,
I like doing the Wild Rift Origin series as well. That was very stressful because it was my first
oh,
um, international in-person event. I famously don't like flying and traveling, so
oops.
getting
I
me over
feel
to
you there. I
Stockholm
feel you.
was a nightmare, and like the whole thing was just like with uh, virus restrictions as well as
Mm.
Brexit restrictions. It was tricky for me to get over and back, kind of. Shout
Mm-hmm.
out to ESL who are really, really great in supporting me in doing so. And in the end, everything was fine. But like that was very stressful. While I was over there, it was a lot of fun. It was great to hang
Yes.
out with a lot of great casters and Carmen. Um,
Cameron is also true. You are amazing. So, and the audience know. So, we'll don't say things
true,
like that.
Thank you.
true.
No, let him say it. I will roast him later, no
Yeah,
problem.
I know that she's gonna bully me, so I'm getting in front of it before getting like the first shots in. But that was a lot of fun, and I think also my
Mhm.
first ever in-person casting event, I did at Wanyu Gaming Cafe in London,
Ooh.
Ah, okay.
where I got unlimited bubble tea, which was great.
Mm.
I got to cast with Doctor, one of my favorite people.
Ah.
And also Kasing, the professional sport player, was there as a desk analyst during Chab Select. He was incredible to work with, loads of fun, really, really pleasant guy as well. So one of those two is probably my favorite, but I think European Masters was probably my favorite in terms of like the casting I did, and like the caliber of people I was working alongside.
I mean, I think you did quite well. And you should all guys check out what he did, because I mean, we will talk about the professional career later, but like that was top notch, to be honest.
Well, actually, I would love to know if the person you call Doctor is because Doctor Who, because it will be wonderful. But I don't know. That maybe is another question regarding this.
He's Dogda. He's a really hello,
Okay.
Dogda. Shout out to you from the show. Really nice guy. And well, shall we talk a little bit about Hitmarker, Yasmina?
Yeah, let's talk about Hitmarker.
Yes.
I said
Talk about
Yasmina,
it.
not Will.
No.
I'm sorry.
No, because I wanted to know how it's for you, because of course you're working as a freelance and as a caster and also as an observer, but what is exactly Hitmarker? Because I'm not familiar with this enterprise and I would like to know more about it. I know Carmen knows certain aspects, but please tell us.
As always.
Yeah, so Hitmarker is my full-time job. So the freelancing is kind of the side hustle. I often say that casting is a hobby that went too far for me. But Hitmarker is the online gaming job board. So we are the largest selection of jobs within the whole gaming sphere. So that includes video game development, esports, streaming, stuff like that. We delve a little bit into stuff like some freelancing bits as well. But basically, if you want to work in this kind of area, Hitmarker will have jobs listed for you. It's also not only just like a jobs board, but it's also got like careers advice, free to access. So we've got a massive Discord community. We've got loads of articles on like every aspect of getting a job in certain sectors, how to write resumes. We've got a bespoke resume software solution that makes it much easier rather than going onto a Word document and being like, how do I do this? We've got it's a step-by-step thing where it tells you this is what you should be including. Just type it into these boxes. We'll make it look nice for you. So that's a very cool, it's a very, very cool place to work. We're based up in Newcastle, in the United Kingdom, but we have, which is a bit of a strange place to have like an esports leading company. But the people who found it from Newcastle, so there's a lot of the staff are very local. But it's really awesome. So I'm the customer and events manager up here, which means that I work on customer queries. So I support candidates with their issues and companies as well who work with us. If there's any errors or problems on the site, I'm the first port of call. And I'm usually like, what's going on? Ask someone who knows what's occurring most of the time. And also events. So I like plan and run our events and our panels and our streams that we do over on our Discord server, which is really awesome. And I present a lot of those as well. So that's kind of what I do 9 to 5 most days.
They are amazing. Like you should check it out if you are trying to enter the industry, because they're really informative. The guests are amazing. The hosts that they've got are amazing as well. I'm not ruling anything. And also, I mean, I know you live in Newcastle. The creators of Hitmarker are from Newcastle, but how did you join them? Like, were you from Newcastle? You are not from Newcastle.
I'm not from Newcastle, no. So I applied. So I knew about Hitmarker from end of university because I was using it to apply for jobs back then it was just esports, but now it's moved much more into gaming because there's loads of jobs in gaming. And it's such a big sector. And esports we think esports is very much encompassed in that. So you'll find jobs on there from like EA, Riot, Blizzard, all of these people, and some of these smaller companies as well. But I applied initially for a weekend role with them. So like a freelance 2 days a week situation while I was an observer, because it was kind of I can do both of these jobs. And between the two of them, there'll be a very good salary. So I'll be able to live pretty comfortably off that. But I didn't get that job because I went through the whole process and then told them I can't work the next 6 weekends,
Oh.
by the way. And the managing director was like, that's cool. We're definitely hiring someone else for this weekend coordinator role. And I was like, that's completely reasonable. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Good luck to that person. So they had known me from then. And then it came to the end of the year. I knew that my observing job was gone because the company that I was freelance, but it was a case of the European Masters were no longer going to be run out of the UK. The UKLC, which went on to be the NLC, was no longer being run out of the UK. And they didn't want UK, they wouldn't have flown me off to Berlin, Stockholm, wherever to observe for them because they were big companies that had observers. Because funnily enough, Riot already have people for that. So I was kind of stuck, and I saw Hitmarker were hiring for full-time staff. And so I applied for it, and I was like, I actually got told by one of my co-workers in production was like, oh, Hitmarker's hiring. And I was like, oh, I'm going to try and apply for that again. So I applied for that role, which was essentially the weekend role, but 5 days a week full-time. And the managing director emailed me pretty soon after I applied, like, are you actually like available to work this time? And I was like, yeah, no, I can actually do it now. Like, I promise there's no like other things going on. I want this job. And he was like, cool. So I did a couple more interviews for that role, but they'd already like seen my work from when I applied the first time. And then they offered me the job, but they were like, you have to move up to Newcastle to do this role. And I lived down in Reading at the time with my parents because I was working all over the shop and it didn't make sense for me to own a flat. And I was like, cool, Newcastle, I've got some money saved up. I'll have to see like what I can afford. I was quite worried I wouldn't be able to live anywhere like properly. But it turns out I had more money saved up from university than I thought. And moving 5 hours north was actually much cheaper than I expected. So I was able to move up here.
Okay.
And then ended up in Newcastle.
For me, I love the name because I know this place because one of my friends actually studied there in the college. So I will tell her that I interview someone who is actually living there. But actually, I like to ask you how you manage your time, because I mean you have a full-time job at the same time you're working as a caster in different tournaments. How you manage it? And Hitmark allow you? I don't know if they allow you to maybe go maybe 1 week or something. How kind of agreement you have?
I gotta give massive credit to Hitmarker because Hitmarker obviously knew I was doing this freelance stuff when I joined, and it was kind of a blessing and a curse when most productions went remote because it became much easier for me to do like a one-day event because it was a case of I could just be online at 6 p.m. and it wouldn't affect my work time because I was working from home anyway. And it was a case of if I finish at 5 and I've got a cast at 6, I log off, go have a shower, come back, cast. When it's been a case of me needing to change work hours and stuff, Hitmarker have been exceptionally understanding with that. It's always a case of giving as much time as I can, like notice and saying, hey, I've got this cast at this time on this day. If it's a full day thing, I'll usually take a day off from work to go and cast. So if I'm going abroad, so when I went to Stockholm, I took a week off to go and cast that event. And if I'm flying around places, I'll usually look to take time off because I don't trust myself to be able to work and cast. I'm sure I could, and there are plenty of people who can get up at 6 a.m., do a full work day, and then cast in the evening. And I think that's that's something I've considered. But it's a case of where it's, say I'm casting at 4 p.m., just starting working a little bit earlier, maybe pick up an extra hour on a different day so that I have an hour less of work that day. But it's very much talking to people at work, making sure that I'm not time specifically needed on anything. And then just showing like, hey, I'm doing an extra hour today, starting an hour early today, so that I can finish an hour early tomorrow to do a cast. And as long as I'm telling people at Hitmarker that, they're very supportive, very understanding of it. It's a massive burden in terms of like my work life because I'm doing 40 hours with Hitmarker. And then there were times like at European Masters, I was doing 40 hours with Hitmarker. and then maybe doing another 20 hours at European Masters in a week, which like grinds you down very hard. But it's fortunately I love working with Hitmarker and I love casting. So it's like I can usually carry myself through those periods because I'm like, what I'm doing is amazing. And if I go into a casting gig that I don't really enjoy, I don't stay there very long. I don't force myself to do casting just because of like the exposure or because I feel I need to do it. If I don't like a role, I leave. So it's usually okay. It's the period after, like just after I finished a gig, where I'll be like, the weekend after this, I'm gonna sleep, and that's all I'm gonna do, and it's gonna be great. So it's difficult,
You
and
earn
like
it.
exactly.
For
I don't
sure.
recommend people do like 80-hour work weeks because it's super unhealthy. But it like if you love what you do, you can kind of do it sometimes. And then as long as you're giving yourself enough time to relax and have a real life, that's good as well.
I mean, like, this is giving us a really good insight into mental health, which is not only important for the players, but also for the casters. And you've said yourself, like 40 hours at your regular job, and then all the 20 hours at EU Masters. That must have been really straining. How stressing is it for you to cast? As in, when you are doing that event longer than one day, is it stressful? Does it become a stressful at any point? And I mean, I'm also guessing the time between events might be a little bit longer sometimes than what you will want it to be. So, how is that? How do you feel during these time periods, and how do you deal with it?
I think for me, generally, it's always been a case of I don't really get stressed at events. I don't get that nervous while casting, because it's shouting at video games, and I always have this reductive mindset when I go into stuff, and I think it protects me from being massively nervous because I'm just going to go shout at the video game and it's going to be fun, and like I know I'm competent at it because otherwise they wouldn't have hired me. So while there is some imposter syndrome, while there are some like little bit of nerves, it's usually quite easy for me. The problem is when I don't have casting on, but there is casting to be done, basically. So beginning of last season, so last split, I went into the split, like Lee started, and I had no like opportunities. I was basically not casting I was casting one amateur league, and that was with a huge casting team where I was getting like 1 or 2 games every like fortnight, which for me wasn't really enough to. It's whenever I feel like I'm moving backwards, that's when I start getting stressed and nervous. And I think it's difficult for all casters when you're kind of either because when you start casting, you can climb really, really quickly to like a certain level, and then you kind of stop, or some people stop. And I was fortunate in that I broke through that initial one very quickly, thanks to a lot of fortuitous circumstances and amazing people. But then I got to another level, and I was like, breakneck stop. Oh no. And that stop was only like 3 weeks. Like it was not a long, or like maybe like a month and a half of like permanent stress. And then like I went further and it was all good. But it's times like that when I'm just like not casting, other people are, oh no, is this like my peak? Have I had my best time in casting already? So those periods really suck for me. Fortunately, they've been relatively rare. I think they've been very common in like recency. So the past like 6 months, I've had 2 or 3 occasions where that's happened. But I think a big part of it is just having a good attitude and going into stuff like, this is life. It's unavoidable. I haven't done anything wrong. So it's just a case of let's see how far I can take this. And if this is my peak, then I'm going to enjoy it and then move on to the next thing kind of vibe.
I mean, such an example for people, Will. I mean, I think Jules is a truly inspirational example of how to overcome these difficulties, because we know that we've got quite a few of them. We'll talk a little bit about that later, not much in detail, but I mean, just to give people an insight of what you can find once you enter the industry, which is not always perfect. good, amazing, what you might perceive from the outside. But I think we still got a little bit of time to keep on talking about you as a custom maker, right, Yasmina?
Yes, I think we can get into it.
Well,
Okay, yes.
it's a big meme, is what it is. It's a joke that kind of kept getting proved. Okay, so the backstory behind this is I was working with a caster who I must say exceptionally more talented than I am. Definitely a stronger caster than I am. This isn't me being like I'm a bad caster. It's they're a very, very good caster. So I did a league with them. Came to the end of the split. They were like basically promoted to another league, which was better paid, more eyes on it, really awesome. And I didn't get any work off the back of it.
Oh.
And I was like, oh no, that sucks. Oh well, was basically my attitude. So I went into work at a different league, and I got paired up with another caster who was pretty new to the scene, but really talented, really energetic, had a really good voice. And I was like, instantly, I was like, this guy, talent. I want to work with him. So we did a split together. We shopped around for work a little bit together. And then he got promoted to a better league with better pay and better opportunities. And I didn't.
Oh.
And so at this point, there were some people who were like, haha, cast with Viperoon and you get promoted to a higher league. And I was like, haha, yeah, imagine if that was true. Haha. And then I work with another caster who's pretty, like, very new, but pretty good. Work on a couple of leagues together, a couple of projects. And then they get an opportunity at a higher level with better pay. And then everyone's like, haha, this keeps happening. And then I think a lot of it, so it was at that point I was kind of like crying, ha ha ha, this is not actually that funny. But more so like the people who were getting opportunities, the people I was working with were very talented and deserved the opportunities they were getting. But for me, it felt kind of like clearly there are eyes on my casting partners, have people decided that I'm not good enough, was basically my attitude. But then this kind of joke spiraled into, I'm always very public and open about supporting other casters. When I was going into casting, there wasn't that much of that going around, and a lot of people are very out for themselves because it's it's very competitive as a field. So I was very public on like, hey, I recommend people for stuff. I will occasionally turn down opportunities that aren't super optimal for me, but I'll recommend people. And these are like paid opportunities because people will offer me like a gig in London. I was offered a role in London a couple of months ago, and it was like the money wasn't great for me, but it was still like a noticeable amount of money. Like the wage was pretty good, but I turned it down and I was like, here's a list of people who are amazing. And one of them ended up being given the opportunity. And I do that. I've done that with quite a few people, trying to help out. And like, even when it's a case of this person is, and there are people in casting who I think are very much, this person is quite good. I'm not going to recommend them because what if they like them more than they like me? Which I've seen a couple of times. But for me, it's always been a case of if if I give up an evening on the NLC because I have a bit of a cough, or I plan to go out to dinner with someone, I could cancel, but I'm not going to because I promised I'm going out for dinner. Then I want to recommend the best person and then if they like that person more than they like me, or that person impresses more than I did, they deserve to be on that league more than I did at the time, right? So that's always been my attitude. And I think because I was very publicly doing that, and there was already this kind of joke going around in the amateur casting scene anyway, that it was kind of like that. I moved it into that realm because while the joke was like funny, it was also a little bit like, I like perpetuating this stereotype, but also I don't want to take away anything from the casters who have done amazingly well, who have just happened to be near me at some point. And my casting philosophy, the way I cast and the way I talk, has always been very build up the analyst because they're the ones who add value to the broadcast. And I think so all of that kind of molded together into this ongoing joke, which has kind of died now, fortunately. With me getting onto NLC, the joke died a little bit,
Sure.
and I haven't heard it recently. So, but that's kind of that's where that meme comes from, in a casting circle jokes, basically.
It's nice to know, but actually, your philosophy, I like it because I know quite hard it is to be the person here, like to be really professional and try not to get the bad side of you. So, but I wanted to make a question, then actually going to take advantage of both of you because I want to have a full insight, especially with if you have noticed any unfair conditions when you wanted to be a caster for a tournament, or for example, if you notice as well how the positions could be different, especially when you're talking to biggest productions.
Yeah, it's a lot of shady stuff goes on in esports behind the scenes. I've seen it from all sides, basically. I think the biggest issue that I have with a broadcast, and this happens in production, but more so in talent, is organizers want to get the best deal that they can. So they want to get good talent for low money. And obviously that makes sense. This is what they're aiming to do. And a lot of organizers, so some of the organizers I've worked with, have been brilliant. They've offered me salaries or like they've offered me rates, and I'm like, can we negotiate this? And I'll negotiate it up a little bit. But there are others who are very much like they use like the financials as a weapon against casters, and they'll basically prevent casters from colluding on stuff. They'll prevent casters supporting each other. And I've seen cases where, and I've been part of cases where I have been removed from leagues and removed from situations where I think part of the reason might have been because I was the most outspoken about fairness, equity, the casters sticking together kind of thing. And while some organizers really like that and they like building this kind of camaraderie with their talent, and this is a lot of the bigger organizers tend to like doing that from my experience. Obviously, I haven't worked on the top tier of broadcast, but in the level below that, a lot of them have been very much like supportive. There's no issue there. It's where budgets are smaller and they're like, we can probably get rid of someone to save some money. And in those cases, it hasn't been when I've been removed, other talent hasn't then seen more money. It's just been a case of now one person is gone. We've gained this salary back. Where's that cash going? So that's the financial side is always like just the general treatment of people in esports can be a bit bad because it's very competitive. It's very much like, and a lot of people are. It's very competitive so that people are out for themselves, which is a reasonable attitude to have in some ways. But then it feels rough when my philosophy has never been that, and then I lose stuff for it. That being said, I will always go back to TOs more than other casters in that regard. By and large, casters have been very good at supporting one another, even when it's tough to do so. But I think TOs need to do better in just treating their staff like human beings. And again, biggest broadcasts I've been on, anytime I've worked with like DreamHack, ESL, Riot, they've always been amazing. So nothing against them. But some of the smaller orgs need to sort it out a little bit, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've learned to speak up more for myself lately, which is good. And part of that was taught by you, Will. Like, being like, it's really important to stand up for myself and for others as well. So thank you for that as well. And I mean, on a lighter note, because this has gotten kind of like serious, and
I know we don't want that, of course.
I mean, so can you also describe it like graphically, so with gestures, how your career progression has been like? Because from caster maker to the king you are now, and the steps that are still to be taken. Could you tell us a little bit about your career so far?
Yes. So as I said, I started with Square One Champions League in 2018.
Okay. With just
I then
visually as well, please.
Oh no, Square One Champions League's up here. It's pinnacle
Okay.
of League of Legends, is what it is. I did a season of Newell in summer 2019. They didn't invite me back. They were clearly not impressed.
Okay.
I've worked with Newell lots since, but after that one, I didn't get invited back. I then went. This is all while doing Square One. I then was invited to do some stuff with the UKEL, which was the third division of the UK League of Legends scene, or might have been second tier back then, but then it became third tier when the NLC became a thing.
Okay.
And then I got invited to do Baltic Masters, which was very wild. That was the biggest jump for me, was going from amateur unpaid stuff by and large, or Newell stuff, which was paid, but it wasn't like I'd only done one split of it at that point, to doing Baltic Masters, which was an ERL. So that was massive. I did Baltic Masters for a split, and then I went back to doing UKL and Newell. And that's when I started doing Women's League of Legends, which is where I met Carmen.
Great.
And I started doing Teamfight Tactics with Newell as well, which was an accident, essentially. And then I got invited back to Baltic Masters at the beginning of 2021, and I did a split again there, and then I left.
Yeah.
And then
things got like really quickly.
Yeah, then things at that, like on leaving Baltic Masters, I left Baltic Masters, or I left Baltic Masters the same day I got invited to University Esports Masters.
Yes.
Which was like probably about the same level of like quality of gameplay. And then like
roasting Baltic Masters.
No, Baltic Masters is very like just elo wise, I think the quality of play is the same. Some teams in University Esports Masters were not great. Some
I hope Sally's is not watching this.
No, okay. Iron Wolves have qualified for Ultraliga. Shout out. Great stuff. I'm still a Go Examiner stan. So, you know, sad they're not the ones. But, and then like a couple of weeks later, I got invited on to do NLC to guest appear. I'd been doing UKLC kind of as a guest occasionally when Hitbrain was tired for like maybe 6 months at this point as well. So I'd been filling in like 2 or 3 times a season there. And then I got invited on to NLC to do a guest appearance for a week. So I did 2 casting days and a hosting day. And then they kept inviting me back but only as a desk host every time. So I desk host a further 5 nights of NLC, including some of their playoffs, which was wild. And I was doing UKLC at this point as well, so I was casting a few days of UKLC. And then at the end of the split, I got invited on to do the European Masters as a guest caster. So I went on there. I was invited on, and I ended up doing 5 nights of European Masters, including a best of 5 quarterfinal, the shortest best of 5 quarterfinal. They were all so hype close matchups. And then I'm out here doing like a hard stomp, 3-0. It took like 2 hours. At one point, like Rift Herald, like straight up killed a guy, just like punched him. I lost my mind. It was hilarious. But I did that. And then I think it was just before the end of European Masters? I can't remember the time on this. I was messaged by ESL who asked, hey, do you want to come over and do the Wild Rift Origin series? Finals in Stockholm. And I was like, obviously, that's incredible. So I flew out there and then did that like a month ago. So that's kind of where I'm at now. It's only downhill from here.
But wow.
So that's kind of been my journey. So I started taking casting semi-seriously towards the end of 2018, I would say. Maybe beginning of 2019. When I started observing, I started like paying attention to it more as a thing because I was working alongside some really talented casters, which I was very fortunate, and some really like friendly, nice people to be around casters, which I think was massively important formatively for me. And now it's towards the end of 2021, so like 3 years I've been actually casting for ish. Yeah, about 3 years. Just under 3 years of like taking it mildly seriously,
Yeah.
I think. So that's where I'm at now.
And look
It's
at
a
where
lot.
you are. And now you've come here as a guest, so that's another
Yeah, and
big
now
thing
I'm
Yeah,
for
that's
obviously
you.
another level
through the
for
roof
sure.
in my career.
Now you can go more. Well, actually, no. I think that's your top
This is the
top
Yeah.
peak.
tier.
Like this is
Yes,
the
this is
breathe it in. This is like the highest level that any of us are going to be at.
exactly
And
that's
then
the
it's
high
just a
level
cliff
here.
face after that.
It doesn't get any better.
It doesn't get any better.
No.
I see that there are some questions, but I think I will put it like 5 minutes before we finish here. But we still have question to make, and of course, I want to know more about the caster role. So I'm going to make you two questions. One
Okay.
is because I'm completely don't know any knowledge about this, and I want to know more. And what is about the role as a play-to-play caster? Because I didn't know the concept, so I would love to know further about it. And also, I know you've been nominated as
Hey.
the it's for Hours Caster of the Year. So I will like to know how was for you that experience. Go ahead.
So play-by-play casting, very briefly, you have 2 or 3 casters. One of them's a play-by-play, the others are color casters, or I tend to call them analysts. I prefer that term. So my job as a play-by-play caster is to kind of, when the team fights are happening, I shout at the team fights. Or more realistically for me, I quickly talk at the team fights and try and build hype and let people know what's going on and why it's exciting what they're watching. And then during time when there's not fighting, it's my job to kind of facilitate analysis and lead the broadcast in terms of like, it's almost like hosting in that way, I think of it, because you're helping your analyst. The analyst is the brainy person, is the person who should have all the information and knowledge. Well, sometimes with some analysts it's that way.
Yeah.
But it's allowing them to naturally present that knowledge and like not make it just like a case of them just info dumping all of like what they need to say. It's making it natural, it's building it in a conversation, and it's about making the other person look good, basically, is the role of a play-by-play. Because your time is like, you look amazing when you're shouting at the team fights, then the rest of the time you're making the other person look amazing, because then if both casters look awesome, then the cast is awesome and the game is awesome, the broadcast is awesome. But I found early on that there were lots of amateur play-by-players who kind of just shouted at team fights, did nothing until the next team fight, which was not optimal, I thought. So that's why I kind of changed that. And there's a lot of casts I was watching in the formative time that were very good at communicating and building that. And the esports award, UK esports award 2020, I actually didn't realize I was nominated initially. I got told,
really kind of believe
because I put in like, because you can't like nominate yourself, you have to be nominated by other people. So I put something up when I saw it was announced, because Hitmarker was I was social media managing for Hitmarker at the time, and I put out a tweet from Hitmarker saying, hey, nominate us for supporting company of the year or something. I can't remember the exact term. We won that year though, Hitmarker award-winning service. So I did that, and then I was like, there's a caster category. So I tweeted from my account saying, if you wanted to nominate me for caster of the year, that'd be funny. But also there are lots of amazing casters, so you like nominate me, but if you don't want to nominate me, nominate someone you like. Was basically the message. And I forgot about it.
You.
Yeah, I went about my day. And then maybe like 2 months later, I got a message from a colleague, like, have you seen this? You've been nominated for caster of the year. And I was like, you're joking. No way. And I look, and there's like a list of really great like casters. So like people who had done like international events. I was looking at all of their like profiles, and it was like big like stadiums as their like cover photos, professional headshots as like their profile pictures, multiple thousand followers on each of them. And at the bottom of this is Viperoon. And I'm just like, no way am I nominated for this. So there was no chance of me winning at all, because I was the smallest caster in terms of what I'd actually cast, the amount I was casting. like my followers, my like interaction and stuff, there was just no way in hell I was winning, and I didn't win. I believe Kremer won, who is a very good caster. So congratulations to him and everyone else who was nominated. And Hitmarker won on the night anyway, so I was still an award winner. But it was just wild. It was the kind of thing again where it was like I never would have expected to be nominated because there's so many much better UK casters than I am. But somehow my name snuck through. So not something I ever expect to be repeated again, but it's funny to put on my LinkedIn.
Don't say never again.
No, well, 2021. Let's go. Let's go one for
Hey,
another win.
let's nominate William Viperoon here for the award once again. Nice. So before we go to the audience questions, I would like to tell a little bit of a story time, very short one. When I was told that I will be casting with Viperoon at the New York Women's League of Legends, I was afraid. I was so scared, not only because, it was my first time casting, but also because he was nominated for Caster of the Year at the UK Sports Awards. And that sounded so scary. Like, okay, I've been paired up with someone who's like S tier when it comes to casting, you know? And then I messaged him being like, I'm afraid. I'm scared. This is my first time casting in English, my first time casting in general. And his advice just really, really marked me, which is what he's been saying a little bit throughout the interview, is that message of a casting partner is like, it's a team, you know, you're a team with your play-by-play caster, with your analyst, to have fun. We're getting paid to do this. So you're getting paid to have fun, essentially, casting games. So doing what you want. And those things have really stuck to me. So if you're looking for advice to become a caster, I'd say you take those two and you think about it and basically enjoy it. That's really the thing for me. And now that I've given this little bit of a speech about how awesome Viperoon is, I think we can finally let our people ask some questions.
Yeah, for sure. But before I have to ask Will, how was Carmen as a caster? Because you have I have to ask.
Right. No, Carmen's actually very good as a casting partner. She's very easy to work with.
Everyone can hear that. So
I know. On record, Carmen's not an awful caster. She's very easy to work with. We've worked together a lot on multiple different projects, so it's been a lot of fun. I don't have that many funny. Carmen cries like at the end of every season, regardless of if it's actually emotional or not. Like she cried at the end of like a league we were casting.
Baltic Masters, Women's League, Women's League in summer, Women's League Spring. I cried at Wild Rift as well. So this was a secret.
Yeah, you just cry at the end of every cast, like season. And
don't worry, Carmen. It's because you're passionate about it. So let it like that.
Carmen's very good to work with. If she wasn't, I wouldn't. She can't focus on camera though. If she wasn't good to work with, I wouldn't keep working with her.
So everything is on record. So now we can pass through our first question, and then if we have time, we can make more.
Okay.
So we have the first from Inkilis. Do you ever run out of ideas when you are casting? Do you have tricks to overcome those moments? Oh, that's a good one. It's an actually tricky one.
Yeah, I think for the most part, casting is fortunate in that you're always talking about a game, so that the game is always moving forward. So even in long stretches, I say this a lot because there are a lot of people who say like, oh, they love the joking and like just talking about stuff that isn't League. I've never really been into that because I feel like there's always something about the game you can talk about. Like what are people doing? What's the itemization? What are the stakes of the game? Where should we be looking in the future? And of course, you're having this conversation with the other person. So it's just having a chat with your friends really about a game of League of Legends or a game of Wild Rift or a game of Teamfight Tactics. So if there's like a period of very low action, which there sometimes is, I can fall back on those like jokey like kind of laughing questions, messing around, having a bit of fun with it. But you have to be a bit careful when you do that because there's a clip somewhere online that you can probably find of me in UKLC where I hardcore have to go from like shouting at my casting partner because they didn't eat breakfast that morning
Okay.
into a game-winning team fight. So like I have to flip the switch like immediately because I'm going from like, what do you mean you didn't have breakfast? And there's the engage, and it's like so like jarring. But I think that the less you like go, like the less you have those jokes and like memes and stuff, which a lot of casters do very, very well, but it's not really my style. Then that's kind of the fallback for me because there's so much to talk about already. It takes a lot for me to feel the need to like just make random jokes to fill time, basically.
Okay, I
So
see.
really insightful from Inkilis. He's always asking good questions, to be honest. Yasmina, I think we have run out of time already.
Yes, I know, but maybe we can make another question if you like, Carmen. We are
Yes,
managing here. Maybe Emilia doesn't bother.
please. Okay, so do you want to ask it, or can I already get to
I
the
let
turn?
you. The floor is yours, Carmen. Go ahead.
Okay, so Viperoon, now that we have you here, for the
Okay.
last question of the day, what is your ultimate goal when it comes to casting and also to career objectives? And what are your short term plans?
For me, I've always been very clear with people who have asked me this. I get asked this loads. I don't really have in casting, especially. I don't have like a goal of what I want to cast. I
Mhm.
talk to so many casters who are like, my goal is to cast LEC, or I want to cast Worlds, or I want to cast European Masters. And the problem with that is, within casting, you don't get to make that decision.
True.
Like I can't just cast Worlds. And even if I was the best caster in the world,
Mhm.
I wouldn't necessarily cast Worlds, if that makes sense. There are leagues where I've been available to cast, where I firmly believe that I've been stronger than some of the people that they've had on those leagues in terms of casting, like raw casting ability, or like status in casting. I felt like this broadcast, I would have been better on this cast than someone that they had on. Again, there's a bit of ego. There's always a bit of ego with casters. You always have to believe that you have to back yourself in those situations. But it's looking at that stuff and going like, like maybe I should have been on that cast, not this other person. And for me, it's not very healthy to think about like that as a goal, because if say my goal had been to cast European Masters in 2020, I made massive improvements in 2020, but I didn't get onto European Masters because there were better casters than me. And if that had been my aim, then I would have failed my goal, even though I did loads of really positive stuff in casting. So my goal is always to look at what you can be improving, what you can be working on, short term, medium term, usually. So what I can improve in my casting to make myself better, what I can do at work to make myself better. At Hitmarker, it's very much it's a project. It's an ongoing process. So my goal there is always just to help improve the product. If Hitmarker succeeds, I feel good, especially if it's something that I've done personally. But like there's stuff where I'll see other people at Hitmarker, like I'll see a really awesome video that I helped record, but it's been like someone else set it up, someone did the captioning, someone did the video editing, someone did the social media copy for it. So I'm a small part of that kind of chain. But so it's a part of everyone at Hitmarker is a link in a chain. When the site succeeds, we're all like, yes, awesome. So that's kind of my goal there. And my goal in casting is just to keep improving, keep getting better. Because then even if I never end up on European Masters again, or even if I don't end up on the LEC, I still feel good because I'm like, yeah, I might not have cast a big league this split, but my team fight casting, my stamina, my ability to turn a phrase has all got much better. So I still feel good about that because those things are in my control. Practicing and getting better is within my control, whereas choosing who casts what for most leagues isn't, if that makes sense.
It
It
makes it
does.
makes.
It
So,
does. Yes, Yasmina?
no, I think that there was some Vincent has the last question and a better answer, but I think maybe one time, maybe we will have to bring you here again so
Oh,
you can
yeah,
have your
please.
top
I talked too long,
again.
so you have to bring it back.
Because we have even more questions to make, and it's of course because we want to know more about the insight about the caster, because I think it's an interesting role and a really difficult one sometimes, and a really stressful one, I imagine
No,
so.
absolutely. It can be at times, yeah, but it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. course.
So
Agree.
actually, I think we have not more question. I think we have to close it. But it has been really a pleasure, Will, to have you here.
It's been a pleasure.
So we have to close it, and we will have to say goodbye to our audience as well. So it has been a pleasure, Will, to see
Yeah,
you.
absolute pleasure. Thanks very much for inviting me.
No, it
And
has been really nice. We have to bring you again, and you have to tell me more details about Carmen for the last time.
I'll think of some
I
embarrassing
will love to
stories for
gossip.
next
Yeah,
time.
perfect. I think the others will appreciate it too. Me, I will do it.
okay, so for now, Willen won't be able to say anything else because we're gonna say goodbye to him for now. Bye bye,
Bye.
Viperoon.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, so now that it's just you and me, Yasmina,
He didn't want to
um,
go. He didn't want to go. That's why.
I don't know, Mr. Stark, I don't want to go. But anyways, we do have to go. We have to say goodbye to people. So thank you very much for tuning in another week for Esports Business Live International Edition here with Jasmina and me. Jasmina, as always, it's been amazing working with
Oh,
you.
it's really amazing as well to
Oh,
work with you. But don't worry our audience because they will have workers, cooperation, and also in marketing and news. So, but of course, you're going to miss us because we have to come for a special. Maybe the next Monday we will see.
oh,
Or
true.
we will see. But for the instance, I hope you enjoy and please follow us. And if you want to support our content, please give it a like. That would be really wonderful. So I'm
Exactly.
going to miss you, Carmen. I'm really going to miss you, and I see you the next
Well,
Monday.
okay, see you next Monday, you guys. See you, Jasmina. Bye
See
bye.
you. Bye bye.